general status of the relationship between the city and the business community? What would you consider doing to improve upon it, if in fact you think it even needs improving? And I guess lastly, I would say, what do you think the business community thinks of you? Stan, start with you. 2 minutes.
Okay. One of the things about this $20 million of funding that I'd like to see taken out of the budget, a lot of that is put on the new homeowner coming into the area. And we're talking about people now that are developing property and other people that work on developing property. Because most of this is tacked on to newcomers. And practically all that $20 million is assessed against future development. So that's a real downer, I think, for development if we can get rid of that $20 million and having it foisted on the community. That's all I have.
Okay, all right. Monica?
So the question was, what would we improve for the business community?
If you even think it needs improvement.
If we need improvement, what support could be there? Okay, well, I would tag along on the comments that Eric made earlier. He and I both had similar experiences on the Development Review Board, and I have in speaking with the community where people come in and develop. I think clarifying our code, our comp plan, and helping make the process through the planning department more efficient for new businesses and even existing businesses that want to expand. To help improve that, I think would be a great assistance. For me, that would be the biggest one.
What do you think the business community
What do I think the business?
evaluates you?
I think the business community doesn't know me that well. So I would like to open up my door to get to know the business community better, and I would like their input in any issues they may have.
Great. Good.
As to the relationship between business and the city, I would say that the keys are communication and efficiency, like I spoke before. I think it's important that the city and businesses be able to have open and honest communication with each other first and foremost. That has to be the basis for everything. And I don't want to belabor the point on the efficiency, but I believe that if we can streamline our code, it's going to increase the predictability that we have in our code for businesses, and it's going to make it more cost effective to present applications and to just generally interact with the city if we can be more efficient in our processes and in our code. What does the business community think of me? Well, I'm an attorney, so it's always a dangerous question to ask. But I would hope that that experience can be something that the business community can look to me and say that I've seen a broad range of how this works in different communities, how it works for different businesses across the range of both size and industries, and I think that experience can go a long ways to one, be able to communicate with the city what it is that businesses are experiencing and encountering, the troubles that they have, and two, I think having seen how this works in other cities, I've got a broad background upon which I can inject some different ideas on how we can approach things in the city.
We should always keep working to try to improve processes, try to improve our rules and regulations, and that should be an ongoing sort of an effort that we continue to make. I'm sure there are things that we can improve. At the same time, I don't believe that most of the business community has a perception of Wilsonville as a horrible place. If you look at the private development, you've got $170, $180 million that have been done in the community by private investment in the last 3.5 years. That's extraordinary. That's astounding in this economy. That's indicative of what's going on. Single-family housing, 190 units. How many local 20,000 person communities can claim that at all? Nearly 400 multifamily units in addition to that. I mean, that's just extraordinary. You look at all these different types of businesses that are located here. I think Wilsonville is doing very well. We should continue to try to do better. We should continue to think about how do we agree on a direction going forward so that we can all pull in the same direction. And I think that that's important for us to do. It's frustrating to me when we seem to be have different goals in mind, and I think that we need to work to try to find consensus. I think you do that through communication, you do it through candid conversation, you do it through continued commitment to working with all stakeholders, and I think our track record shows we're doing that. We're very successful compared to many other suburban communities, and we need to keep on that path in a very robust way. Thank you.
Okay, and Richard.
Well, to answer your question, Ernie, I think before I came onto council, it was clear to me that the relationship between the city and the business community was strained at best. That was one of the reasons why I ran for city council, because I thought there was a better way. I didn't view that that the goals of the city and the goals of the business community were necessarily at odds. And I brought an approach of partnership to my role on city council. The second part of your question was, what would the business community say about me? And I'll just quote a couple of folks from the business community to give you an idea of what their response would be. Richard brings good judgment, fresh and innovative ideas, and a strong record of building positive solutions to getting the right things done for Wilsonville. Richard championed efforts to create an economic development strategy for Wilsonville, and will continue to work hard to create a vibrant business environment. I believe that we can have great schools, we can have outstanding parks, we can have world-class libraries, great recreational opportunities for our community, and we can have a vibrant business climate. They are not at odds with each other. Richard brings a history of building trust through open and direct communication. He's a consummate professional with a strong record of building solid relationships to support the needs of our community. Richard understands that by working collaboratively with local and regional partners, great things can be accomplished for our citizens. That's what the business community is saying about me. That's what the citizens that live in this community are saying about me. Those are things that I value greatly. It shouldn't take 18 years to build a Fred Meyer to serve the needs of our community. That's not an example of cooperation and collaboration between the city and the business community. I believe we can do better, and I'm proud that during my term on the city council, we have made customer service a priority. We've made economic development a priority, and we've made quality of life a priority. Thank you.
Minutes. Would you support the expansion of the urban renewal district to assist in funding the infrastructure that needs to get built in Coffee Creek?
In answer to the question regarding expanding the urban renewal for the Coffee Creek development, I'd like to see if there's other options out there first before we do that, to see if there's any regional partnerships that maybe could assist us in that before we go to the expansion of the urban renewal. There might be some other options out there that we haven't explored yet that have interest in that area. I understand there might be some groups that are working on putting together a regional fund to assist in communities that are trying to build out and assist them in putting in the new infrastructure required to finish development. So I'd like to explore that avenue, see if there's other options. And then if we are to appoint, I would like to explore that option first before we expand the urban renewal. And not closing the door on it, but saying I'd like to explore other options first.
Well, I'll try not to jab Monica for taking my answer, because I generally agree with that, because I think urban renewal is a tool in our toolbox, but it's not the only one that we have, and I think we need to explore all of the options as to what might work. And I agree that some other partnerships should be explored before we take that step.
I've been at the table in those discussions about other alternatives that are being explored in the region, and the reality is that there are huge infrastructure demands across the region. And if we're waiting for someone else to step up and say, we've got $5, $10, $20 million for you here, just step up, we're going to be waiting a long time. We obviously need to be talking with those other entities and looking at that, but the reality is going to come down to the situations where we have to locally demonstrate our commitment and our ability to perform in our own jurisdiction, and that means we have to put money on the table and a plan, and the only money we've got access to on that scale is urban renewal money. So that is something that we need to have a dialogue about, both with our regional partners and with our community, and we need to develop an incremental plan that makes sense and is doable within the financial resources that we likely have. I think that within the next couple of years, we likely can move toward closing down an existing urban renewal district, our oldest one, which would then make sense for us to move into helping build up the activity in a new urban renewal district that we could only hope would be as successful as that first district, which has, generated, I don't even know the numbers off the top of my head. It's hundreds of millions of dollars more in taxable value now than it was when it was formed. And that is likely what we're going to need to do. Obviously, we need to explore all the opportunities, and we need to get everybody on board as to how, when, and with what priorities we move that forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I would agree with Mr. Postma on the point that I believe urban renewal is a tool in the toolkit, certainly not the only tool that's available. I would also say that, in my opinion, urban renewal has been abused as a tool in Wilsonville in the past. I guess my principle first and foremost is that we need to have a clear and responsible plan for reducing the level of debt that we've already saddled our community with through the urban renewal districts. I believe that any dollars that have been spent through urban renewal should have been spent in a way that creates jobs and creates additional revenue for the community. That hasn't been the case in the past. And finally, I believe that any discussion of using urban renewal in the future needs to reflect the voice of the community. The community needs to have a say in whether or not they're willing to accept additional debt in the form of urban renewal spending in our community. And I've also advocated directly on the City Council and requested staff to lay out a plan for retiring the existing urban renewal debt earlier than had initially been planned, so that we can have a conversation with the community about what that's going to cost, what it's going to take, and what the trade-offs might be.
I'm basically opposed to urban renewal districts. They take away funding from individuals, other governments. It'd be the last tool I'd ever consider to use for growth for the city. The city's growing just fine without it, and I don't see why we'd need to get into the practice of inducing other companies to come here. There's been so many failures with cities and governments that put up funding without anything from the other side, and then it going belly up. I just don't really care for urban renewal districts.